Hi, I'm here with Steve Keeter. Steve is a longtime small press publisher, writer of small press comics, and I've been involved with small press comics for a number of years also. But for those of you who may be watching and don't know what small press is, or what the definition of that is, Steve, could you kind of give us a little of your definition of what small press is? There's one of Steve's comics right there.
These are comics produced by people like me and lots of creative people all over, everywhere. Small press is just comics that aren't large press. It's not DC or Marvel or any of the other companies. It's stuff that we do. We do it from home, some of them have large print runs. Some of them have 50 copy print runs. But the thing is, it's not about making money. Nobody can make money on these.
That's for sure. It's not about making money.
It's about loving what you do. And
right.
Most of us we have regular jobs, and we don't make money off this, so we just do it because we enjoy doing it. And there's a vast network of people all over the country and elsewhere that are doing comics, and if they can't break into DC or Marvel or they don't want to, they just want to do it their way without any restrictions. They publish, and we have a network. It's become a network because we all found out about each other a long time ago.
Yeah, I was going to ask Steve, when did you start? How long ago did you get involved? Because for me, it was like 1998,
Yeah. It was about it was 1968, 69.
That
yeah, I got a
long
copy.
ago?
I can dig up a copy of my very first zine, fanzine. We called them fanzines back in those days because they were professional comics, or there were stuff that was produced by the fans.
Yeah.
Now they're called small press comics because, well, that's what they are. And we don't necessarily we're not necessarily a fan of this or that. We just creative people who do creative things. But the first thing I ever published was like the worst fanzine ever published anywhere. And just for you guys, I'm gonna dig it out really quick. It shouldn't take a second.
That's great.
I got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff down here under this curtain. Ta-da!
Wow.
Under the curtain.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Got to be in here somewhere because they're in alphabetical order. So I'm gonna put this phone down for a second. I'll put it back over here.
Okay.
Back over here. All right. It's in here somewhere. Here's something cool. This is Endeavor number 10 from our pal Kurt Erickson, who's also in the United Fanzine Organization.
Okay, we're going to talk about that a little bit here in a minute.
So
let people know what that is.
Where were we? See, everything's in alphabetical order so I can find it quickly, right?
Right, yeah, like me.
Yeah, so of course it's not happening quickly. It's here it is.
Oh, all right.
Okay. I got to be careful because one of these, this is Galaxy Comics number 1.
Wow. And
that's my artwork. That's an early version of my character Sunwing on the cover.
Oh, yeah. Now.
So the very first thing that I ever published was done on a, well, you know what? There was one before that. That one was early. We got one more here, real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to make a mess here.
No, that's all right. You got all day to clean it up, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Yeah, I have a lot of comics too, and the hardest thing is when you want to find one. It's very difficult.
Okay. Guess what? It looks like my comics are somehow got mixed up. So forget it. But let me read it to you.
Okay.
But when I did find this is a copy of Touche #1 that Steve Shipley published.
Okay.
Oh, we're back with, I think Carl Gafford printed this for him. And this must have been, about 68, about 69 or 70, I think.
Wow.
It's got a strip by Carl Gafford. Carl Gafford, who worked for DC Comics and Marvel, and he was the guy who started the BPP Co-op, the VPP, the Blue Flag Publications, that later became the UFO, the United Fanzine Organization. So I can't find that horrible zine, but that's okay. This pretty much shows you how bad my artwork was. But this is what happened was this. I was an Edgar Rice Burroughs fan, and I was reading his books and the Tarzan and the Barsoomian. There was a fanzine called Barsoomian about Barsoom, but I came into comics by way of Edgar Rice Burroughs fandom. And I loved comics ever since I was a kid. Ever since I was little, I was writing and drawing comics. My parents used to read Superman, Superboy comics to me when I was little, and so I was drawing my own comics. And I published this thing. It was an Edgar Rice Burroughs fanzine on the Spirit Duplicator at my high school at the time.
That's what I was going to ask. How are these duplicated? That's what I was going to ask you.
This was on a Spirit Duplicator. I actually bought one in my hometown at that time of Edenton, North Carolina. That you cranked it. It was a crank, one copy, and but the first thing that I ever published was done on the high school Spirit Duplicator that the teachers used to use to print tests for people. You remember, some of you, us older people, remember that purple ink.
You could smell the ink.
Yeah, everybody would always pick up their test and smell them because it smelled so good.
Yeah.
It was an alcohol-based solution, and you use like carbon paper, and you drew on the back of it, and it transferred over. You turned the crank, and the drum transferred the image onto 20-pound bond paper.
Yeah.
So I did this Edgar Rice Burroughs fanzine. I printed like 20 copies and sent a few copies. I sent one to Cal Cazadesis, who did E.R. Beadham at the time, which was the first fanzine I ever bought, E.R. Beadham. I think it was number 27 or number 29. I still have it somewhere. But then I found out about comics fandom. And because I'd been doing comics, and I did this Galaxy Comics #1, and when I was in high school, I had this teacher. His name was Chuck Robinson. Chuck Robinson II. He used to publish Comique, which had works by Bill Shelley and a lot of other people. That was pretty popular back in those days in the early 70s. And he told me about comics fandom, because what happened? Somebody told him, says he was asking about or talking about comics in his class, and somebody said, well, there's a guy and he can write and draw comics and he's just like the real ones. So somebody told him about me, and I ended up in one of his classes, and he says, yeah, I want to see what you do. Because then he saw it, and he says, he looked at it for a long time, and it was pretty horrible. But then I started publishing. I published #1, which is my first zine of any real substance. It was basically my version of Comique. I was doing comics like he was, with a lot of contributors. He opened me up to the network. He told me about the BPP, and it was him who really got me started. He started giving me tips, telling me how I could improve my art and stories. And then it just went on from there. But that's how it all started. And Chuck Robinson was a great influence. He's still out there somewhere, but he's retired, and I've been trying to get him to do stuff, but he takes his time about things.
Now, what I was going to say was, I know that for a while you had quit publishing and drawing and that, and I was wondering what brought you back into it. I don't know how long you were kind of out of it, but you didn't do it for a while. Is that right, or am I right?
That's true.
Okay.
For over a decade. It was after my divorce. I got divorced, and that was kind of a life-changing event for me. And I got kind of lost for a little while. I left Florida, I went to California, and then I came back. And the only person, I was just considered myself pretty much retired from small press, and the only person who could get me to do anything was a lot of arm twisting was Jim Main. He kept saying, "Hey, I want to do this. Can you send me a script? Can you do this?" And I said, okay, because he kept bugging me. Jim, if you're watching this, don't bug me so much, man. I'm just kidding. But he convinced me. So I was doing stuff for him, and I don't know. When I came back to Florida, people were still sending me after all these years, even though I'd been out of touch. People were still sending me small press comics, and especially Jim. And it's just at one point, I just thought, this is something I have to do. I can't stop doing it. I was born to do comics. I mean, it's something that's in you.
Yeah.
If you're a creative person, you can't stop creating.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just live a mundane life, and tend your garden and go to work and go to sleep. You have to do creative things, and so Larry Blake was another guy who got back in touch with me, and he sent me this Beacon annual, all this artwork for a complete issue, large issue of the Beacon, and I held on to it for a little while, and then I finally decided, I'm going to publish this thing, and I did, and then after that, it kept going. Now I can't stop publishing. I really enjoy it,
A little list of what I think you've done, and maybe you can add to it a little. I've got here that you do the Raven, Sunwing, another one, Mantra, which is not exactly a comic book, is it? Mantra is a little different. The Beacon.
Whatever I want it to be.
Okay.
More diverse.
Nightman, is that also one of yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nightman is my Deus ex machina or machina or however you say. But it seems that in recent stories especially, he's so powerful, and he lives in this dark dimension, and he can only come to Earth at night because he's Nightman. And he's bailed out Sunwing in a recent story, and he's bailed out some of the other heroes. I think the Oracle agents.
You got some crossover there.
Yeah. When things get so bad, he's like Superman showing up at the end of Justice League. We need this guy, and he saves the day. But I'm going to try to I'm trying not to overuse him in that respect because the other heroes need to solve their own problems sometimes.
There you go.
This guy come out of nowhere,
doing all the work for them.
Yeah, but I am thinking about a Nightman #1. He's never had his own comic. Even though I did this character. He's one of the ones I used to draw on lined notebook paper back in the '60s. I created him a long time ago. But I want to do he's never had an origin story, or he did, but it was way back then, and it was like a copy of the Dead Man's origin. It was a guy who died and then came back as a hero. But I have a whole different plan for that. We're going to have a whole new origin. And I've just started thinking about this, and I want to. There will be a Nightman #1 sometime this year.
Now, which ones of those? I know you didn't draw them all. You write and draw, right? So, which ones did you write, and which ones did you draw?
Well, I'm not as good an artist as I once was. I used to draw a lot. These days, I mostly write and publish.
I see.
Jim did talk me into publishing, or into doing a Beacon story. Well, he didn't know I was going to draw it. That was the Beacon versus I'm a Man that appeared recently in one of Jim's comics. Here's a page from it. This is the original art.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Wow.
Not too bad. But basically, I'm not a bad penciler, but I'm a pretty lousy inker. Here they are, the action-packed page here.
Yeah, very nice. Wow.
Yeah. So at the time, and he asked me if I do a script for him, and I says, yeah, I got a Beacon story I'd like to do. And he says, okay, who's going to draw it? And I says, I'm going to draw it. Yeah. And Jim was kind. He said, "No way, man." No, he didn't really. He, he said, "Okay,"
Mm-hmm.
and so I did. I still think it's a good story. It's a pretty funny story. I'm proud of that one. Yeah, but I could have used a better inker.
It's
I don't
amazing.
draw everything I write. I've written.
Yeah, it's amazing the time that it takes to draw one of these maybe 16-page comic books. 16 pages is a lot, really. I find it very time-consuming to draw that, and I draw them in pencil and then go back and ink them, and holy mackerel, that's a lot of work.
I got, what is it? I got a 16-pager from you. Is it 16 pages? Or it's going to be in the next
16
mantra.
pages, yeah.
And mantra again is whatever I want it to be. You know, it can have text fiction in it. It can have comics. It can have poetry or whatever.
Yeah.
And but the new one's going to have your story in it because it's a great story, and I love your artwork. The cartooning style is just great. And a lot of other stuff. I'm still working on exactly what's going in there, but it's going to be a big issue. I mean, it might be at least 60 pages long, maybe longer.
Whoa! Wow!
That's the next one that I'm working on, that I'm thinking about.
Uh-huh.
I got a folder here. The folder here.
Uh-huh.
See, I'm old-fashioned. Look, this is, everybody has everything in their computer. Not me. I got stuff in folders right here. This is wing number 5. Yeah.
That's the way I've always done it too.
Tetragrammaton fragments number 260. I got stuff all here like this. Some stuff is in the computer, but I'm old school. Like, I started doing this a long, long time ago, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And some things I just like doing it the old-fashioned way. It's what I learned to do, and it's what I like to do.
Right. That's what you should do.
Hands-on, hands-on. And
I was thinking about change the subject just a little bit. I think you and I were both pretty good friends with Tim Corrigan.
Yeah.
If anybody that doesn't know, Tim Corrigan was kind of considered the father of small press comics, at least, more recent ones. And I just wondered, I thought that he had taken a trip to Florida to do some work with you. Did that happen, or am I wrong on that?
He took several trips to Florida.
Okay.
One time, he used to come and he'd stay with me. At first he was staying with me, and then I found out he was staying in a tent somewhere outside of town, and I was like, "You don't need to do that." And he said, "Yeah, but I don't want to impose on anybody." He was a great guy,
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, but he would come, and first he stayed for a week, and then he stayed for another time. He stayed for a couple of months because of the job he was doing. He was a sign painter.
Yes.
Up in New York, and there weren't a lot of calls for sign. Everything gone digital, and his profession wasn't making him a lot of money anymore. And he would come down to Florida and work for a while, and we did comics while I was here. We did comics together while he was here, and but he'd come out here to make money.
Yeah.
And then go back up to New York.
I see. Okay. I knew he had gone down there, and I knew he did something. I thought you guys did some things together. Did you do a little music together also?
Yeah, we did a couple of albums together.
Uh-huh.
A couple of albums. Do I have those here? I might have those. Yeah, let me see it. I'm right here.
Okay.
I like to have everything within reach. If I'm on my computer, that's Grand Central, whatever you call it. Anyway, everything has to be nearby. I don't like running all around the room. We did them at first on cassette. So I know somewhere. And then we transferred them to CD. There's a bunch of CDs here. Okay, here's one of them.
Okay.
Yes, I have stuff on CDs from ages ago. I used to transfer everything to CD.
Yeah.
This was Harvest, and we did this together. This is an album we did. Tim was a good guitar player.
Yes, and Harvest, the name kind of reminds me. I always thought Tim sounded like Neil Young to me. Did you ever get that?
He had almost a high falsetto voice, at times.
Yeah.
we did this one together too. In the Yard.
Uh-huh.
Tim Corrigan and Steve Keeter. The artwork on the cover is by Tim.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, really nice stuff. So yeah, at that time, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was playing guitar and recording, and I recorded hundreds of songs, and I've still got a lot of it saved in my computer. I've got some old cassette tapes with songs that we did. But Tim would, sometimes he would just come up with a riff. He would come up with the riff, and I would add the words. We would be set up. My studio was set up like, my comic stuff was there. My typewriter was there. I had an old clunky manual typewriter for many, many years. And, my guitars and amplifier. I mean, there's some little amplifiers right over here. I haven't given it up completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Distortion pedal down here and a delay.
Oh, yeah.
But we would get together. We'd go in the room. He had his guitar. I had my guitar, and I had a bass guitar and a drum machine at the time. So we would just start playing, and we start jamming, and songs came out of it. A lot of stuff Tim had already written, but some stuff we came up pretty much on the spot. Came up with.
He was a man of many talents.
Yeah.
And
he published Small Press Comics Explosion, which was the greatest news and reviews zine ever published. Right, that's him. Yep.
There it is.
The greatest news and reviews zine ever published.
This is from 1998. And this is what got me into small press. Tim.
He brought in a lot of people.
Yeah. In fact, in this issue, he reviewed my first comic that I ever did, which was terrible, but he gave it a great review, and I could tell he knew it. He said, we need to work on margins. You're kind of working all the way to the edge of the paper. I didn't even know you had to leave a margin, But anyway, and then later, the greatest thrill for me was when I went to Space, which is a small press comics convention in Columbus, Ohio. I was able to meet Tim, and we went a number of years, and we started getting our table where it would be next to each other. We'd spend the whole weekend together, and I just thought he was the greatest guy ever. I came up with an idea for a comic book that was, they were cowboys, but they were a band. A traveling cowboy band in about 1910 or 1901. He loved that idea. I mean, he just thought that was the greatest thing ever. And he and I kind of had the same sense of humor, so that helped. And he published, 4 or 5 issues using those characters. Some of it was what I had written, some of it he wrote. And even Larry Blake, who you mentioned earlier, he had a little hand in it also. He wrote a little bit. I don't think he drew anything, but I think he threw in some ideas for Tim. But
that's another creative thing.
I thought the world of Tim. I really did.
It was a great loss. It was a great loss when he passed away, and he was young. I mean, his 50s when he passed away.
I didn't know. I never knew what he died of. Do you?
I don't think so. I don't remember at this right now. I don't remember.
Okay.
But it was a tragic loss.
Assuming heart attack.
He was a great guy.
Yeah. I don't know.
The first time he showed, a couple of times, there was a couple of things. One time he just showed up. I didn't know he was coming, and I came home with my wife at the time, and there's Tim sitting on the front door, on the front porch of the house. He's just sitting there, and I was like, oh, hi, Tim. And my wife says, hi, Tim. And we were just used to him by that time. Well, Tim is here again, But the first time we got together, the first time he came to visit, it would be in the 80s or, it was a long time ago. Like, I think it was in the late 80s. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
And, I was living in a little apartment. I had just moved to Florida. Yeah, I just moved to Florida from North Carolina, where I grew up. And I moved here in 84. So it might have been about 87 or sometime soon after. We were living in an apartment. He came in, we welcomed him in. He came inside, and right away we sat down at the table, and he says, I have this idea, and I think it was an Oracle Agents comic. And I said, well, I have an idea too. You want to do a comic? And he says, yeah. I said, well, when should we do this? He said, what about right now? And I said, okay. So we sat down at my kitchen table, and he had his backpack, and he had all these Bristol boards, the stuff to draw on. He had all his artistic implements were in that backpack. He took them out, and he sat down. And I said, okay, I'll start writing, and I'll hand you the pages. And we did that. Was it Oracle Agents 1 or 2? But anyway, we just did it like that. I was writing. I'd hand it to him, and he started drawing.
He's
drawing. I'm writing
unbelievably fast. I mean, from the detail he would put into his comics, he could do them. He told me he'd sit in front of the TV and draw a whole comic watching a TV show with all the detail and backgrounds, full backgrounds. The lettering, of course, he was a letterer, and that was perfect. Was really good. Oh, yeah.
Great letterer, yeah.
Amazing guy.
We did that comic. It took us less than an hour to do the entire comic.
It's amazing what he could do, yeah. He published those Corrigan, I forgot the name of it, little digest comics. He did one a month for, I don't know how many years.
Yeah. Tim Corrigan's Superhero Comics is what started it. Then he had something called
another name for. I got it.
Tim Corrigan's Comics or something. Yeah.
Right here.
Excuse me. Got a little congestion because this is Florida. There's a lot of pollen around.
And stories. And this is the one. This is the one I was talking about with the band, the cowboy band.
Yeah, that's a beautiful cover too.
Tim Corrigan's Comics and Stories.
Yep.
And was Roy Ritter and the Red River Wranglers. And
it's a great name.
he can just spit these things out like nothing. I mean, look, the detail and all that, and to draw one a month.
Yeah, he was really amazing.
Amazing guy. Yeah.
Did you know about when DC and Marvel tried to sue him back in the 60s or 70s?
No.
You haven't heard about it? Yeah, he started publishing Tim Corrigan's Superhero Comics.
Really?
Yeah, that was his first real. He published and he put ads in Marvel and DC Comics for this, and he got a lot of orders. But then he was contacted by a lawyer for Marvel and DC, Marvel or DC or both, but the lawyer was saying that he was infringing on a copyright by using the word superhero in the title of his comics, and cease and desist. And after about six issues, that's why he stopped doing Tim Corrigan's superhero comics. Started doing other stuff. Yeah, they actually have a copyright on the word or shared trademark or something on the word superhero.
Wow. Well, I was talking to him, and of course he lived right near Buffalo, New York. I said, you ever go into New York City with samples of your work and take it in New York? He got mad at me. He said, I would never go to New York. I mean, not really mad, but he said in no uncertain terms he would not go to New York and try to do anything. He just wouldn't do that.
Yeah, he wasn't really a city guy. He's sort of a out of town guy. He had he used to work in his yard and stuff. And all I know is he had trees and stuff. Right, he did a lot of yard work and stuff. Mm-hmm. And when he came to Orlando the first time, and I was living in a house, renting a house, and had a huge backyard with these trees with all these tiny little leaves that would fall all over your yard, and you had a massive raking job. I was talking to Tim one day, and I said, see all this has got to be raked up, and there were oak trees, millions of tiny little leaves, and it was a huge job. It took 2 days just to rake all that stuff up and put it out on the street. And I told Tim, I said, if it was up to me, I'd pave over all of this. He says, oh, you're one of those guys, huh?
Well, yeah.
We love nature.
Yeah. He wanted to come here to St. Louis. We have a hiking trail called the Katy Trail, and it's about 200 miles long. And he wanted to come and hike that trail with me. We talked about it. I used to talk on the phone every once in a while, and we talked about it, and nothing ever happened. But he wanted to do that.
He was an adventurous kind of guy, and he loved nature.
Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit more about mantra because something caught my eye. And you mentioned that Joe Shea was going to be in the next issue of Mantra. Well, I published Joe Shea I had a little zine called Out of the Blue. Joe contributed to that every month as long as I did it.
Okay. Yeah. Haven't heard from him in years.
I have no idea. I didn't lost track of him completely. And then when you said, I thought you said Joe Shea was going to be in it.
Right here.
Yeah.
Joseph M. Shea. This is a text fiction story that's going to appear in the new Mantra.
He used to draw.
I've had this for 40, 50 years, and it's finally going to see print now.
So you haven't heard from him recently?
Oh, I haven't heard from him in a long time.
Okay, I thought what caught my eye was, he's sending stuff to Steve, but that's from a long time ago. Okay.
I've been unearthing unprinted stuff from decades ago that I finally want to see this stuff out. Some of the people I have no idea where they are anymore, but I try to get in touch with everyone once their work is published.
Yeah.
But some of them have just vanished off the face of the earth.
Oh, right. And some, unfortunately, that I used to publish passed. But anyway, I was going to ask you one kind of last thing. If somebody wants to buy some of your books, which they should, how would they go about that? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, for one thing, I advertise on eBay. So you can just look me up, put in Steve Keeter or whatever. It's in there somewhere. And they can order my comics on eBay by using PayPal or eBay is working on a new payment method of their own. But you can try PayPal. That would be stevekeeter@gmail.com.
Okay.
So, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me, that's where I am.
This is going to be on YouTube eventually, and I'll put that in there. So
don't forget the UFO. Remember the UFO?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. I know that you are the chairman of the UFO, the United Fanzine Organization, and you can go ahead and talk a little bit about that too, because that's interesting.
Well, as I mentioned before, it used to be the BPP. It was started by Carl Gafford in like 1968 or 69, and somewhere in the early 70s, the group fell apart for whatever reason. But the group fell apart. But this was at the time. Remember, I mentioned Chuck Robinson, who got me into small press. He also told me about the BPP, Blue Plaque Publications, and number one was the comic that I used to apply for the UFO. The members vote on you. You see your work and they vote on you, and you get voted in. So I got voted in, and I was the last person voted into the BPP before it fell apart. Carl was busy, had his own tied up with stuff, and he just couldn't publish the newsletter anymore. It was a newsletter that comes out every month. Or it was every month at that time. It's every 2 months now. Okay. And I thought it was a shame. I talked to Chuck, and he says, "Gee, that's too bad." I remember when Chuck got the letter from Carl Gafford. I was there, and he read the letter and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't keep this up. So the BPP is no more." I thought, well, that's a shame. I said, what if I tried to revive it? And he sent something to Carl Gafford. He asked if it would be okay if Steve tries to revive the group, and Carl said okay. And so then I published a new BPP newsletter and sent it out to a bunch of the old members, and only a couple of people responded. And those were people there was 3 people voted in at the end of the BPP. It was myself, Kara Sherman, who was Carl Gafford's girlfriend, and Frank Miller. Frank Miller, who did Daredevil and Elektra and all that. The Frank Miller.
Frank Miller, the Batman Frank Miller?
Batman Frank Miller. Yeah, he was also voted in at the same time as me.
Holy cow.
I sent this newsletter out to people, and none of the original BPP members responded, but Frank Miller and Kara Sherman did, and they says, okay, we'll vote for you as a new chairman. And so they voted for me. and then they both disappeared. I don't know where Kara went, but you know where Frank went. He went on to become one heck of a creative dynamo and change comics. So then I started publishing the newsletter, and what I did was I sent out another newsletter asking for people to join, and that's when Jim Main got into the group. Oh my goodness, was that when Larry Johnson got in? If not, then it was shortly after. We had a few members that we started with. Rod Snyder, who's passed away, but so we got going with a new co-op, and I felt that we shouldn't, since there's none of the original members are in the group except me. Why don't we change the title? First, we changed it to Blue Phoenix Publications, indicating a rising from the ashes. And then someone suggested the United Fan Organization. Well, we found out somebody else was already using it, so we changed it to the United Fanzine Organization, and it's been that way ever since. So I was chairman way back in, it was 50 years ago, way back or more. It was I was just 13 years old, 13 or 14 at the time.
Really?
In publishing, yeah, and it was the early 70s. 73 is when we really got going, 1973. And I've been chairman several times, numerous times, I dropped out for a while, of course. When I got back in, I found out that one of the chairmen was wanting to step down for, he had problems and he wasn't able to keep publishing. And they made me an honorary member. So it was an honorary membership where I would receive the newsletter. And over all the years, I kept receiving it. But I wasn't an actual member, and so we were online in one of the UFO groups. We have a private UFO group for members only, and I said, look, if you need a chairman, vote me in and vote for me for chairman. And that was over a year ago, and they did. I got a unanimous vote from everyone, and I was the new chairman. After all these years.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Now
believe
you
it.
got all the work that goes along with it.
Yeah, we got the new UFO newsletter, Tetragrammaton Fragments, which literally means fragments of God.
That name has always bothered me. I could never say it, for one thing, and I don't know what it means.
Tetragrammaton is the old Hebrew of the consonants that make up the name of God, the unpronounceable name of God. So it's called the Tetragrammaton.
Okay.
So really, it means fragments from God.
I mean, I have no idea. All the I've seen the pub. I'm trying to remember if I was ever a member, and it's possible that I was. I don't know. I was a member.
Yeah, you were a member, or either of the UFO or maybe of the. We had another BPP co-op revival that Jim Main and I did 20 years ago, when. Instead of going back into the UFO, we started another group, and we called it by the old name, Blue Plaque Publications, and it lasted for about 10 years. So it's quite a history here.
Yeah.
I think you've never been a member of that one. I have to go back and check.
I think I was in that one, but there may have been even another one besides the UFO that I was in.
I would have to go back and check because there's been so many members in and out. One person, I'll tell you one person who knows, Rob Imes. Rob Imes, who was the chairman a while back, but he has an amazing knowledge of the history of the UFO and the BPP. I mean, he's kept track of all this stuff and has scans of most of the issues of the newsletter that were ever published. And he's quite the historian. And even though he doesn't go back, he only goes back to the last decade or whatever, but he was a great chairman. He publishes Ditko-mania, which is a long-running Ditko zine, really a great zine. He inherited that from Bill Hall, who was a member of the BPP, of the UFO, way back when. But Rob Imes can, he's really kept up with the history. If I have a question, if I can't remember something, I ask Rob.
Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking is, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it too.
Kind of end the recording here. And again, I really appreciate you doing this for me.